You're listening to the Aesthetically Speaking podcast, presented by Nextech.
Welcome to Aesthetically Speaking. I'm Robin in Tow, and I'm your host. And today our guest is Kirstie Jackson. Kirstie, I'm really excited to have you on today's show. And today I'm excited about our topic. But first, let's get our listeners to learn a little bit more about you, because one of the things I love about any time that I get to engage with you and just have great conversation about the industry is your depth of insight goes across many different realms of aesthetics. So I'm going to let you share a little bit about yourself with our listeners.
So I actually started in aesthetic medicine. I call it aesthetic medicine because, like you say, my experience spans multiple different specialties. But I started over 20 years ago in the United Kingdom, where I'm from, surprise. And I was working for a plastic surgeon, and he specialized in actually plastics and transaffirmation care. So it was a very interesting specialty and had a lot of lasers, a lot of tech, a lot of devices, a med spa. And then moved to the States and started again in plastics, but then decided I wanted to learn more and add more strings to the bow, if you will, and joined Derm. I thought it was a natural adjacent fit. Was in derm for a really long time and finally ended up in a multi-specialty practice, which was dermatology, plastic surgery, med spa, esthetician services, Mohs, the mix of the medical and the cosmetic. But I think that my primary area of specialty has always been very heavily cosmetic. But I still know the medical really well too.
Well, then fast forward today and your role here at AmSpa as the Director of Education. Tell the listeners a little bit about what that role really is.
So obviously, AmSpa is rooted in legal compliance and the membership product. So yes, we do events as well to support the membership side of things, the medical spa show being the obvious one that people remember.
Yes. Uh-huh.
But we are a membership organization at heart, and we are here to serve the aesthetic community. And we do consider it a community. And that is supporting with legal understanding of, how a practice should be structured, delegating treatments and services, how you can be compliant with the who's doing what piece of it, what devices can you run, how can you pay your people. It kind of spans everything, really, everything you touch. As we've grown as an organization, we are very responsive to the needs of industry and membership. And so naturally, as we have grown, the need for business education and has come alongside with the legal and the clinical as well, like the anatomy training classes that we offer and injectable education. And we have a lot of industry partners as well who we work with that can fill in some of the gaps there as well about laser and education. And it really covers everything.
Let's dig into a little bit about what I consider the two different ways that I think about education. There's your staff and your practice. And what are we doing to educate them? What are we doing to keep up with what they need to know? And are we doing it consistently? I mean, that's a whole bucket. Then I think the other bucket is thinking about patient education. Different, but a lot of crossover there. A lot of things that need to be the same. When I think about the staff and their education, there's not just the products and the treatments, but it's acclimating to the industry and the requirements and, let's just say, HIPAA in general.
Yeah.
What do you do when it comes to educating staff about HIPAA and what are those requirements? And then let's just mix it up a little bit more. Let's throw in there 50 states, 50 flavors, and then let's throw in there the whole concept of the rules and regulations that are dictated based upon societies that might be at play here as well, based upon the medical boards that might be part of that practice. So I think about staff education is very complex and critical. And I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'm going to hand that microphone over to you. AmSpa has just built this gorgeous training center, and I've got opportunity to actually tour it, which is rare, in Chicago for another event. And wow, how impressive is it that you guys saw the need to really facilitate on building out something that is available to facilitate education that is critical. And you get to really spearhead that. I love that. So let's talk about staff education first. I think there's so much there. What would you think are, let's start with, what do you think the three biggest areas of opportunity where it's missed?
I think not knowing who you want to hire, and this bleeds into your culture, your identity, your mission, vision, and values. So you really have to know who the right fit for your business is, because that isn't the same for everyone. I think that you have to have a process. You can't just be winging it. I think when you're smaller, it's very easy to do things kind of off the cuff and take things one by one. But as you grow, and most people do want to grow, having a foundation for like onboarding and educating and who is responsible and how long is the training process. So process becomes very important. And then I think it's the trajectory of our industry in general, in that, and this does bleed into the who is the right person for your business, but I think you have to have people that love to learn, because everything is changing constantly. And even if you have like a fully trained employee, a staff member, there's going to be like a new device, a new treatment, a new service, a new photography system, a EMR transition. So the right person in the right seat, the process, and the making sure that you realize this is never going to be one and done, and there's always going to be modifications and tweakments. And you definitely have to check yourself at various places along the journey, because you might have something that's very robust for your team of 15. And then when you get to 30, you start seeing things in real time going awry, and you're like, this isn't working what was working previous is not working anymore. So yeah, I think having a process is really important. And once you have your right person.
A lot of people don't even start with the right person part.
Yeah.
And you hit a nail on the head there. I don't think people even sometimes know what they're looking for. I would back up and even say, before you may have a job description and you know that's the job or the role you need to fulfill. But I challenge people, what's the profile of that person look like that you want to sit in that role? You know what the job is they have to do, but what does it look like?
Yeah.
Is there a level of energy that you need? Is there a certain level of not just experience, but different qualifications that are going to be really important? And those are the things that I don't think people really understand these are the criteria that I need to fulfill to really ensure that this is going to be the right opportunity that's fulfilled. Then once you get them in the door, making sure that they are trained. There's, to your point, what looks like with 5 or 10 employees, it might be a lot of on-the-job training. And then as you scale and your business grows, to your point, what looked good then or worked then doesn't always work today. I love the idea of the intranet.
Yeah.
I love the idea of an LMS. Telling our listeners, an LMS, learning management system, is usually what you see a lot of the big grown-up businesses use. It's not inexpensive, but it really protects a business because it ensures that training is tested, and that testing is almost like a security or an insurance policy that you did the job of providing the option and making sure the staff are trained. So it's critical, I think, for some of the bigger practices to focus on something.
Good consistency metrics.
It's inconsistent. It doesn't, a lot of times on the job training, what is said from person to person degrades over time. And what was 10 steps may all of a sudden become 5 steps. And then something gets lost, and then you don't even notice. And then a year later, you're wondering, now where's that data? Or we stopped using that process, or we changed that process.
Yeah.
And then you're not aware of it. And then all of a sudden there's this huge risk that's, bubbled up to the surface. So, in your experience, when you think about those processes, they evolve, they change, and they're critical. What would someone do that's a small business or even a medium business that maybe doesn't have the in-house resources or the right people to develop the training materials, or even know where do they go to even know what they should be doing with respect to training? Because there's a lot of buckets. It's not just product, but it's like we said earlier, it could be, okay, these are my security trainings. These are my, you know, employee manual trainings. There's a lot of different trainings. Where does someone go to even figure out what that list should be that they should be ensuring is part of their training?
Yeah, I mean, you can create these things internally for yourselves from a simple checklist. I know that like when I was in a smaller practice, that's exactly what I did. And it would be simple things like, has this person completed their HIPAA and OSHA training? And when in the educational journey should this be completed? Through to setting up meetings with every single rep and vendor that we worked with, because maybe I wasn't the best person to train on that skincare product or that device. So your reps can be really great sources of knowledge and information under those circumstances. Um, and then it would be shadowing clinic as well. You know, how it would be mandatory for the person to shadow each provider in the clinic X number of times. And it would all be structured out as so gradually, slowly but surely we could check things off the list. And
Checklist is good though.
yeah,
I know a lot of practices don't even start with a checklist. And I think that's simple but important.
I think also assigning a mentor or a person in the team who's doing the job well. Maybe you have a superstar front desk person and they want more responsibility. And the easiest way to give them more responsibility is to maybe give them a stipend whilst they're training the new hire and give them a goal for, okay, if you can get this person signed off in 3 months per the checklist, you get a nice little financial bonus for doing that, executing that task really well.
It's a great idea. It's a great idea.
Even in a larger format, a larger scaled practice, every person that trained, like the team lead, so every clinic had, say there was 3 medical assistants to a provider, one of those medical assistants would be the team lead, and one of the responsibilities of the team lead was that they would train. And that's because we trusted them, we knew they did an excellent job. And so when we had a new medical assistant, they would buddy up and that would be their mentor, and we would work through getting them signed off. And even with my providers, a new provider coming on, that's kind of a little bit different because a provider sometimes comes to you pre-built with all of these skills. And do you need to...
And bad habits too sometimes.
Sometimes bad habits, yes. And do you need to train a provider who did a fellowship in cosmetic and laser surgery on how to use a laser resurfacing device? You probably don't. But so before they even onboarded, I would send out a list of these are all the product lines, treatments, and services that we carry in our office. Check the things that you would say you are confident with. And that would come back to me. And then we would prioritize filling the gaps. So I wouldn't necessarily spend a lot of time focusing on the areas that they already knew really well and they were really comfortable with. Instead, we would focus on the devices and treatments and services that were like brand new to them because that's what they wanted to learn. And I think as we go down that road, more and more staff speaks to the financial compensation piece of being an employee too. Yes, pay is important to your staff, but if you ask them, quite often they want more responsibility and they really appreciate continued education and learning. And I'm seeing practices actually have budgets for, in some cases, for each staff member, for you have an education stipend of X number of dollars per year where you can go to a conference and we will send you and we will pay for it. And those things can often give the employee more skin in the game than just a paycheck, because the best employees feel they want to give their best. They feel motivated. They get jazzed and excited by your mission, vision, and values. And that's who you want representing your business.
Yeah, you do. I think you said so much that was just so powerful. When you think about that new staff member, because there's beyond the new, what do you do with the staff member that comes back and says, well, I didn't get trained on that? I think the checklist is a great way to really keep them going. and signing off that you learned it. But I know that that's a real risk in businesses. And it's certainly easy to figure out how to manipulate the system, so to speak. And that's where, you've got those employees that are the bad ones that, we sometimes need to weed out. But at the same time, the ones that are raising their hands saying, well, I didn't get trained on that because it's their excuse for why they didn't do it right or they're not doing it at all.
Yeah.
I think those are areas too that are of concern that businesses have to remember. Maybe you go back and do that training again. What are some things you've seen there?
Well, it should never be a surprise to the employee they're not performing in a way that the business wants them or needs them to. So I do think you need to make time, whatever's the size of your organization, you need to make time to meet with your team regularly. And if you have a smaller staff environment, that is probably like the manager. I'm going to use me as an example. That might be me meeting with everyone on my team once a month. I would make time, schedule a one-on-one, not rushed, like 2-hour meeting if needed, to really listen to them. And I would say to them, I need you to bring your agenda items. I'm going to have agenda items, but you need to bring agenda items too. And everything would be documented, and we would keep notes. So if, as the meetings progressed over months and years, we could look back as to what we had discussed previously, hold ourselves accountable. I think as you get larger, it might be a manager of a department that is, you're maybe mentoring the manager and the manager is then mentoring their team. But it's the same process. And I always, this is actually something my mum taught me, but it's, you can say anything to anyone as long as you say it nicely. And it's especially important in the business world. I think we often refer to these as uncomfortable conversations, but they're really only as uncomfortable as you want to make them.
Right.
And that's another one of my Kirstieisms is that I call that the ick. When you feel it in your stomach and you're like, I don't want to have this conversation. It's going to go really poorly, or I'm nervous, or I don't know how to say this the right way, or I'm going to upset someone. And so you just avoid it and you feel that ick. That is usually an indication that the conversation has to be had even more so. And I just forced myself to head on into those situations, but knowing that being able to say things nicely to people. And I even got to the point where I would say to staff undergoing progressive discipline, which I will get to that in just a moment, because I think it does link to what we're discussing, is that try to see progressive discipline as a positive opportunity for you to handle this differently. And it shows us that we have faith that you can do things differently. Otherwise, we simply wouldn't be having this conversation. It would be a very different conversation, and potentially a termination because we just don't think you're the right fit. But we're having this conversation because we do believe in you, and we do believe that you have the potential to do things differently. Some of the best employees I've ever worked with, I had to have numerous conversations with them. We can't say things that way, or we need to be handling this slightly differently. And they've gone on to manage their own practices and shine and do amazing things. So,
but you had to coach them.
Right.
You needed to mentor them, and you had to take that ick moment
yeah,
and really lean into it, which is kind of like coaching yourself if you think about it.
yeah.
And you coached yourself through it, and look at the character you've built in yourself. But a lot of people are afraid of those moments. Confrontation is tough. So you know what? Go practice in the mirror, or go throw it on ChatGPT and say, give me a couple of ways to
bullet
approach this.
points.
Give me a couple of ways to approach this. There's so many tools out there to help us get through the ick.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just avoid it, and then it just turns into so much of a bigger problem in a business.
I like to assume positive intent as often as I can. So if I did, in the question that you asked about, if I had an employee that said, oh, well, I was never shown this, first of all, I would look back through their training plan and see because in our practice, the employee signed off on their training and the trainer signed off. So both accountability.
Process. Great.
So we'd go back and be like, okay, well, on this day at this time, you did acknowledge that you felt comfortable doing this task. So what's changed? That kind of catches them in the initial, what could potentially be a fib.
So you say it so nicely.
It catches them there and just forces the accountability piece. And sometimes they would acknowledge, oh yeah, no, you're right. That did happen. I then need to be refreshed on this. And then you're like, okay, no problem. So then you move forward to okay, we're going to retrain you on this and re-sign you off on this. And there will be an addendum to your training plan to show that happened. But then if the employee continues to fail at the task at hand, you can either look at your trainer, you can look at your internal processes, or if it truly is the employee not meeting the target, we might want to consider performance improvement plan, where we're giving them specific goals they need to achieve in a certain time frame. Otherwise, it would result in further progressive discipline.
Let's talk about progressive discipline. You've said it a few times. I think that our listeners need to really lean into what you've got to say on this because it's good stuff.
I think you have to have a policy for it. You have to know what within your business is acceptable and not acceptable. So that's your employee handbook, right?
Yes.
That's your
key must-have
document of truth. So, and normally within an employee handbook, it does delineate clearly these are the things that the business will implement progressive discipline and what that process looks like. So you're never just having a conversation with someone based on hopes and prayers, thoughts and feelings. It's very easy to do that when someone has done something frustrating or emotions come into things. You have to be led by, how do we create facts from this issue? And that's where the handbook comes in. So like quite often, if someone came to me and said, so-and-so in the clinic is gossiping and it's creating a toxic work environment, okay? This is a common thing we hear, and it's also based very emotional, very rooted in feelings. But it's also a problem, so how do we mitigate that? Well, usually there's some kind of line in your employee handbook saying that we need to treat each other with professional courtesy and respect, and that we're not going to be distracted from the work at hand. So now you can quote per page 26 in the employee handbook, it clearly states these are the behaviors that we expect of our employees. And on this day at this time, you were found to not be exemplifying those behaviors.
They don't fit your culture. They're not representing your core values.
And then you tell them this is what we expect. And there's usually escalation criteria as well. So, verbal warning. Well, it actually starts with what we would call a consultation. So a consultation is kind of like a verbal, but it's where you're talking with your employee. And yes, something does get documented, but it's more of a casual conversation. A good example for that would be your employee that maybe is late a lot. Maybe you get to true progressive discipline like a verbal warning after 5 times being late. That's just an example. But maybe it happens a couple of times and you go to your employee and you say, I've noticed you've been late a couple of times. Do we need to revise your schedule? Is something going on that we need to be aware? Always that positive intent. But then we write a note and the consultation goes in the HR file. If it continues to happen, then it's verbal and then it's written and then it might be written final. Then you might get PIP, performance improvement plan. And then really we're talking termination. But that's why problematic behavior or challenging behavior should never be a surprise to your employee, because you should actually be addressing it.
And a surprising situation is that a lot of people don't take that action.
They don't.
Because of the ick.
Because of the ick. Yeah,
Because
it's
of the
like
ick.
they either psych themselves out of having the conversation, or they don't feel confident in doing it, or maybe they don't
know how.
Yep, they don't know how, or the actual process to them is new to them. Or I mean, I've been very lucky, or I've worked with a lot of exceptional HR people. My practice got to the size where we needed one. And I would say a business that is kind of at that 70-75 employee mark is probably ready for someone in-house. But you do have options prior to that. And I also don't think people know about these options either, is that a lot of HR companies offer like PEO services where essentially what they'll do is they will assign an HR person to your organization. Now, they won't terminate people for you. They won't implement a PIP for you. They won't do training plans for you, but they will guide you through everything
Coach?
and coach you. And that can be very helpful if you are kind of within that, I would say even a 10 employee, but you could even start out with one, but anywhere between 10 and like 70 people, that would be an excellent option. And the practice manager wears all the hats, right? They are expected to be preloaded with all of this knowledge of how to train people, all the HR, onboarding, licensure, operations, managing business financials, running reports.
And they're not allowed to be sick or have a bad day.
Yeah, it's a
Right?
lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to do for one person. And I think that would boggle a lot of us in today's modern era of practices, because I think you tend to see more specialization in job roles these days. We're
Yeah.
slowly getting wise to the fact that this shouldn't be one person doing everything.
Well, there's a lot of fractional companies out there that can help you do it,
Yep.
to your point. Do you find that these businesses also provide some of the forms that you need, even a template for an employee manual, something that helps you even within the state-specific requirements?
Yes, I do. And not that I'm here to tout any particular business or organization, but I mean, AmSpa offers some of those forms.
That's great.
Some pharmaceutical companies offer some of those forms. Some consulting firms who are exceptional offer those kind of documents. MSOs offer some of those support. So if you really want help, there are
There's help.
people out there that can help you learn or do things just to get confident. And it might be that I know that like Next Tech's really big on helping you guys with coaches, which I think is amazing.
Yes.
They can be your interim coach just to get you comfortable
Mhm.
and acclimated, so you're not having to do everything by yourself.
We've talked a lot about the new employee onboarding, some great tips there, but education doesn't stop there.
Mm-mm.
And that's where we find the biggest opportunity for practices and risk, because they don't continue it. They think that there's not enough time, or they don't set aside time because there's new devices, or you get in a new device, or there's new products, or there's just changes in the industry overall. How do we expect our teams to actually be the best that they can be without having those different educational opportunities? I love that you had said that there's sometimes a stipend or something that's provided as part of the benefits
Yeah.
for an employee
Mhm.
to send them to an AmSpa meeting or some sort of, educational event that's applicable to their role. But let's talk about where you've seen some of that go sideways in businesses because they've not provided that information or continuous education.
I think things being outdated
Mm.
and not progressing, like people thinking that it's a one and done activity, or practices that aren't carving out regular time for internal community events where you're often learning. And I think a really good example of that is maybe once a month you have an all staff office meeting, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people do that. And I would always encourage everyone to like have an agenda for your office meeting. And if it's a PowerPoint, maybe you have slides that each slide covers a different topic, and or each department has a slide, and maybe 15 to 30 minutes of every all staff office meeting is learning the new service or the new treatment or the new skincare product, and everyone's doing that. But you really have to make time for it.
Yeah.
And I also think that not running KPI metrics is going back to the nerdy data stuff again, but it can be really enlightening. Like if you just onboarded a new device, like maybe you onboarded an M-Sculpt or something, or an M-Face, and you're looking at how many of these items you're selling, and maybe one of them is not selling, maybe there's one treatment or service. Every time we all have them, we're like,
Yes.
oh, why aren't people selling more of that service? Or that skincare product is great. Why am I not seeing more sales? I guarantee it's probably down to lack of education.
Oh.
So if you use your KPIs and translate that into, okay, guys, I know for a fact that we are not selling enough elastin nectar. Again, I'm just using that as an easy example because it goes very well procedurally. Your reports will tell you that. And it's probably because people don't understand how it works or how to explain it to the patient, or maybe the providers have never considered that it's a good adjunct to some of the treatments and services they do. You got to run your KPIs to know some of that stuff. So I think, running the KPIs, never thinking that education is just done, actively making time for training people, having budgets to send staff off-site, they just come back rejuvenated. I have worked at practices that have been on both sides of that fence. One practice where the staff would beg, oh, we want to go. And they would be like, well, it's expensive and, maybe next time, and didn't have the budget for it, versus the practices that would make the time and the money for it and be like, no, we are going to send you. And then staff are so grateful. They're just like, wow, you're me, like I get to go to this. Yes, you, because we believe in you and we trust you and we want you to grow and develop in your role. Which brings me on, and I know you've spoken about this a lot, is that if you don't have a growth plan for your employee, they will become disenfranchised from your business incredibly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
There are very few great employees these days that show up and they're like, no, I'm good. I just want to come to work, plug in the numbers and go home. And that's okay if you have people like that. But I would say in this industry, whether it's the industry breeds it or we tend to attract it, these people, like, no, they want to grow.
Yeah.
They want to learn. They're like, I want to be here and I want to, if I start out as a front desk person or answering the phones, what's next? Where can I go from here? What role can I hop into? Where can I get more responsibility and therefore more financial compensation? Most of the time people want that. And so if you're not giving that, that is a one-way ticket to a very disengaged employee.
I also want to say that collaboration is a big part of those events. They can go and learn. So, your event's coming up very soon. Our user conference is just in 2 weeks. And one of the things we leaned into this year was people want to talk to other people that do their job.
Yep.
They want to vent. They want to feel more included in a conversation where they aren't feeling like I'm the only person in the world that feels this stress and this pain. They live inside their four walls.
Yeah.
They deal with these complex situations, these high stress situations sometimes with the demands of aesthetic patients. And they just want to feel like there's other people out there that are feeling the same way that they do. And they also want to ideate around it. What are you doing to manage this?
Yep.
What are you doing? Are you seeing this? What's working for you? And that collaboration, sitting at a table with someone and having a lunch and talking about it, or being in a room where people are all like-minded and a lot of them may have the same role, they get to talk about it. And I think that goes back to that rejuvenates them. They feel energized. They feel more empowered because there's more than just themselves out there that are feeling this way. And they get to see what other people are doing to manage it.
Yeah.
And it brings back a new energy into a practice, which to me is a big investment in those employees. And they need that. To your point, it goes back to that culture that you're really trying to grow. Because, I spoke about this yesterday when I was here speaking for a meeting. And it's expensive to onboard an employee.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, you train them. You have to invest in training. That means that the role might have some hiccups while they're learning.
Yep.
There's going to be some slip ups. There could be they forgot to put a charge in or you missed something and revenue wasn't there on one particular visit because they didn't charge everything. Mistakes will happen when they're learning. That's why there's a phase of learning. But that's an investment.
Mm-hmm. I think they say it's 2/3 of the cost of an annual salary when you lose a trained employee.
That's right.
And so it is an expensive
It's very expensive.
exercise in doing things wrong, or not well enough, or not being responsive to the problem, because I always used to say it took about 6 months for someone to feel comfortable in derm. And yes, my old practice was, it's large. It was a bit of a beast, and we had a call center, and we had a check-in zone that was separate to checkout zone, and the tasks were different, and someone had to rotate through all areas of the clinic, and it was a lot. To get comfortable and to feel that you've never worked with CPT or ICD before, and it's a lot for them to learn.
It's a
in
new
addition
language
to
sometimes.
and then throw into the mix 23 lasers that you might have, and 300 skincare SKUs, and 23 treatment rooms, and 11 staff members. The variables stack up quickly.
And a tech stack.
Yeah. And
Technology.
a tech stack. And so 6 months, it takes them 6 months to feel comfortable.
Yeah, it does take time. It is an investment. It's a cost. And once you've made that investment, that's why we go back to hire the right person in the first place.
Yeah.
Do your diligence and get the right person. Really take the time to look for the right people. Get the all-star on the first run, and not 5 runs later, because that's going to be really costly. And then when you get them in there and they are the right person, you want to keep them.
Thanks for listening to Aesthetically Speaking, the podcast where beauty meets business, presented by Nextech. Follow and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Links to the resources mentioned on this podcast are available in your show notes. For more information about Nextech, visit nextech.com, or to learn more about TouchMD, go to touchmd.com. Aesthetically Speaking is a production of The Axis, TheAxis.io.